Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Gender Equity Commission's November 2021 meeting. I would like to thank all of our commissioners for joining us here today and also welcome the public who is watching us live or on YouTube. Thank you for being here with us. I am going to go ahead and start with the roll call. First, I would like to acknowledge and thank Commissioner Newman for stepping in to take minutes for the November meeting. So thank you, Commissioner Newman. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with the roll call. It's not in order. So, all right, Commissioner Overton.
Here.
Okay, Commissioner Manuel.
Present.
Okay, Commissioner Higginbotham did let me know they would not be able to make it today. Commissioner Gross. See your screen.
Yes, here. Sorry.
Perfect. Hi, Commissioner
Hi.
Hale.
Present and unmuted.
Okay. Commissioner Schultz.
Yes, present.
Commissioner Coffey.
Present.
Commissioner Davidson. Is not here with us. Commissioner Corbel is not here with us. Commissioner Ramey.
Present.
Commissioner Walker is not here with us. And Commissioner Hanson.
Present.
All right, I waited for you. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much. All right, so sent you all a big packet of our meeting minutes that include July, September, and October, as well as committee reports from the Gender Analysis Committee, as well as our CEDAW report. If everyone has had a chance to review, I would like to go ahead and make a motion to vote on accepting those minutes and reports as part of our consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion.
Okay, Commissioner Overton made a motion. Who's second?
Second.
Okay, wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, oh, wonderful. Okay. Any opposed? I don't think so. Any abstentions? Okay, we have successfully submitted July, September, and October meeting minutes, as well as our committee reports into record. So thank you. And again, I do want to acknowledge this has been a team effort. So thank you to those commissioners who have stepped in and taken the minutes for those months. So just very quickly, looking at new business. So as believe I shared with you all via email, we're aware of the work that the YWCA Women and Girls Foundation and the Black Women's Policy Agenda has been doing around pay equity. And also we know that that work has been largely based on our reports, the 2019 report, as well as the new normal report with our 11 policy recommendations. So I am very excited to share with you all that on behalf of the commission, I was invited to participate as a member of the steering committee, which again, they're kind of just getting started, but again, looking at how to move forward. I spoke to them at length. They asked me to share the work that the commission has been doing in this past year, anything that we have been doing to expand upon those reports, et cetera. And I did talk about our AAUW training. And so the members of the committee were very eager to support us. And so basically for the remainder of the trainings that we have left, I will be sharing with them the dates of those trainings, as well as basically the information that the Workforce Equity Committee has been putting out. And so we will be getting additional support for getting the word out on that. But it's very exciting to have the commission represented on that committee and to be engaging and supporting the work. And they have shared with me how excited they are for us to be working with them, because again, they acknowledge that the Gender Equity Commission's work over the last couple of years has really helped to support the work. So I just kind of wanted to give you all just a quick update on that. So prior to our public meeting, we had a really wonderful working session. And there were some grounding principles that the commission had come up with prior to our leadership retreat. And as a result of that retreat that was led by our governance and leadership committee, there are some additions and a few revisions that we made to those grounding principles. And now I'm very excited for us to have the opportunity to move forward with voting to adopt those grounding principles to really be a guide for the Gender Equity Commission and its future work. And seeing that we do, in fact, have a majority of folks to vote on this, I would like to ask for a motion to vote to adopt these grounding principles for the Gender Equity Commission. Can I please have a motion?
I would like to make a motion for us to adopt the grounding principles for the Gender Equity Commission.
Wonderful. Do I have a second?
I will second that. Chair.
Awesome. All in favor? All right. Having a unanimous vote, I see no oppositions or abstentions. We have officially voted on the new grounding principles for the Gender Equity Commission. Very exciting. And I would like to also share and announce that once the document has been finalized, we will be posting it and sharing it on our Gender Equity Commission page so that the public can see the guiding principles that we will be using to inform our work moving forward. This has taken a lot of hours. Again, we're all volunteers. And so I just want to say as chair, I am extremely proud of this document. And I think that it's a really wonderful testament to the diversity, the spirit of inclusion, and the expertise of the commissioners that sit as members. And so I'm extremely proud of it. And also just want to say it's a living document. So just as social justice movements, human rights focuses, et cetera, as we continue to learn new language, the commission moving forward, as needed, may make some future revisions as we have done. However, at this point, as we are now, I'm very excited for us to have this document moving forward and for it to inform our future work. So congratulations, everyone. And a special thank you again to the Governance and Leadership Committee, Committee Chair, Commissioner Coffey, and our former chair and committee member, Commissioner Ramey. Thank you very much for your work. All right, we did it, everyone. Quickly, I just wanted to lift up that Trying Together, they did share with us their policy updates. I did send that out to everyone. Is there anything in that anyone saw that they wanted to raise for discussion or had any comments on? Before we move forward, I just kind of wanted to remind everyone that they saw that. Just some quick notable things that I saw in case anyone was not aware. That the paid leave piece was reintroduced through the House of Representatives at 4 weeks of paid leave. So if Build Back Better is passed and moves on to the Senate, that the House did reintroduce the paid leave at 4 weeks. That is one update that I did see present in that. And then also they emphasized how Build Back Better as it stands, how the differences that would make in investing in early childhood education and really helping to make a difference in that. And of course, we know that all of that ties directly into our 11 policy recommendations. And so again, just noting that if this legislation were to move forward, what a difference it could make. Again, even based off of our own research and recommendations at our level. But those are the two pieces that I saw that stood out. I didn't know if anybody had any comments or I just wanted to acknowledge that since they were gracious enough to make sure we're informed. Okay, awesome. Also, again, we are co-sponsors of the FISA Foundation's webinar series and they have a session coming up, Transformative Justice in the Lives of Survivors of Disabilities, tomorrow, Wednesday, November 18th. So I just kind of wanted to remind everyone of that. Please continue to share with people. It is free. please continue to share out that information with folks and support. It has been a really incredible webinar series. Again, two areas that people don't talk about: survivors and people with disabilities, and the fact that they're intersecting. It really is an important issue to be raised. And again, very proud of the Gender Equity Commission and commissioners for voting to support this as co-sponsors, and really grateful to be a part of getting this out there to the public. And then I do believe we have, if the Workforce Equity Committee just quickly wants to share the next training that is coming up so that the public knows about it. If you want to just, Commissioner Manuel, if you would like to just quickly share with us the date for the next training.
First, I want to thank those that are in attendance that have attended the session. Please share with your friends that the next session will be conducted tomorrow evening, Wednesday, November 17th. It is only 1 hour from 5 p.m. until 6 p.m. You have the opportunity to still register. You can go on the website of the Gender Equity Commission, and the respective flyer with the link for you to register for the next session is scheduled for tomorrow, Wednesday, November 17th, 5 p.m. until 7 p.m. And our co-sponsor is the Pennsylvania SHRM State Council, Pennsylvania Society for Human Resource Management State Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Manuel. And that reminds me that the webinar is actually on Thursday, the 18th, not Wednesday, the 18th. So please excuse me for that. So the AAUW salary negotiation training, sponsored by the city of Pittsburgh, co-sponsored by Pennsylvania SHRM, is tomorrow from 5 to 6. And the webinar series by the FISA Foundation will take place in the afternoon of Thursday, November 18th. Thank you very much for that. And now I would like to invite Commissioner Hale to give us a report out for the CDOT group.
Thank you. And I will magically unmute myself. So the last CDOT meeting, and that's the local grassroots activist group that was part of bringing the gender equity ordinance to the city of Pittsburgh. It had our monthly meeting last week on Thursday evening. We discussed our Pittsburgh and Allegheny County advocacy work in terms of looking at the gender and race equity audit law from 2010 in Allegheny County. We also had a guest speaker, Sue Fricci from the Women's Law Project, as a guest speaker, and she brought to our attention a number of issues. And so I will go over the high level bullet point of those. But she was basically discussing, as an overview, pressing legal protection issues for women in Allegheny County. So we discussed paid sick leave and family care leave for both the city and county, paid safe days, the issue of the backlog of rape clearance kits, pregnancy and nursing protections and reasonable accommodations. Pittsburgh has an ordinance and the county does not yet. She mentioned the issues at Allegheny County Jail, including excessive violence, violation of the shackling law for pregnant incarcerated persons, juvenile justice issues and racial disparities, which is a whole other, all of these are other lectures, right? Especially for, and including for LGBTQIA+ youth. She talked about the $15 minimum wage efforts to protect the most vulnerable and most marginalized people in our city and county. She talked about crisis pregnancy centers putting out false information and the need for improved sex education in schools so that young people can make informed decisions about their bodies. She discussed voting access issues, and she shared a couple of reports with our group, which I have shared in my written report to the commission. Based on some discussion we had with her, we discussed sort of revisiting our strategies as a small activist group, looking at originally bringing a CDOT ordinance to Allegheny County. And then we had refined that, and we're looking at the gender and race equity audit ordinance, which is existing, Allegheny County law, and how to maybe make sure that it's being implemented as well as possible, and or amplifying that to improve gender equity, intersectional gender equity protections at the county level. After our discussion with Sue, we thought about different strategies that we could use to do that. And so we have scheduled a meeting that will take place the week following the Thanksgiving holiday to have a follow-up conversation within our group, our subcommittee on the Allegheny County Ordinance Project. We are continuing to bring speakers from Allegheny County ally organizations to our monthly meetings, including agencies, or mostly agencies that already support the Allegheny for CEDAW effort. And that list is available at the Pittsburgh #4 CEDAW.org website. Are there any questions? Comments?
I muted myself. Ha ha ha. Anybody have any questions for Commissioner Hale and what was shared, or points or comments? Thank you so much. It's always good to hear what you all are doing and to hear about the efforts being made to expand upon, what's been done. So, thank you again to you and the entire group. Again, volunteers, right?
Yeah, we meet at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Very volunteer.
Okay, so I know that Chief Powell was hoping to join us, and I know that she has a meeting that doesn't end till 5. She was hoping to get here at 4:30, but she did send along policy updates from the mayor's office in the event that she was not here on time. So just wanted to lift that up, that she did want to be here with us. And so we did say 4:30, so she may try to join us in about 5 minutes or so. But in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and just share what was shared. And if she does join us, if anyone has any questions, we can ask her. All right, so, okay. So updates from the mayor's office. Budget is being discussed starting this week after the mayor formally presented his 2022 budgets to city council last week in his final State of the City budget address. He has proposed $613,226,785 operating budget and a $613,226,785 operating budget and $158,619,522 capital budget with no proposed tax increases. Despite the financial forecast associated with the long-term economic effects of the pandemic, Mayor Peduto's proposed budgets include historic investments in infrastructure and city assets, including $17.6 million for street paving, concrete slab replacement, and ADA ramps. $12.1 million to invest in electric vehicles for the city fleet, funding for the deployment of free blue recycling bins in the South and West neighborhoods, and increases in funding for traffic calming and Vision Zero safety improvements, landslide remediation, parks and recreation centers. Council will be having hearings all week to go through each department's budget that people can listen to and weigh in on. Legislation was submitted to make the city office to support immigrant, refugee, and new American communities permanent with the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. The office will continue the work started by Welcoming Pittsburgh initiative to create an advocacy support network to improve the quality of life and improve city services for immigrants and refugees. The city of Pittsburgh has won second place in an international competition called the Climate Challenge Cup as part of COP26. The award was in the Achieving Net Zero category for the Marshall Plan for Middle America today in Glasgow, Scotland. So those are the updates from the mayor's office in terms of legislation, et cetera. So of course, the budgets are ongoing. So if anybody wants to tune in, I do encourage people to do so. I used to do so a little bit more regularly than I do now. But again, if you have a chance, I definitely encourage you to do so. It's interesting. And, you get to see how the money is being spent and where it's going. So Does anybody have any comments? Anything they'd like to share or discuss on what was just shared? The floor is open. I'm just putting it out there for anyone. Commissioner Manuel, looks like you have something to say. Yes.
Just for those community partners in attendance to understand that the budget for the Gender Equity Commission is part of the mayoral office's area of budget. And so there has been money submitted on the table for the year of 2022 to help push forward our agenda of goals and objectives of this respective commission. So it's always interesting to your point, Madam Chair, to be attentive, to understand what is being discussed at the table, because what is passed by respective city council also impacts the goal and objectives of this respective commission.
Commissioner
Thank
Manuel, do you have any idea when the mayor's office budget is going to be voted on?
Hold on, I have that on my calendar.
Or Commissioner Gross, either. Either of you could probably answer that
I
question.
know when I know when HR
Hi.
is going.
Hi.
Hi,
they on
sorry, I'm not on
first?
video.
You're
Yeah.
okay. You're okay. You're okay.
Right, so we are required by law to pass the balanced budget by December 31st.
Okay.
We're on schedule to finish up the budget hearings. As you pointed out, we do one for every department and kind of a city partner like the authorities between now and the beginning of December. So the earliest that you would see a vote on the budget, including budget amendments and any additions or anything like that, would be the beginning of December, probably, actually maybe the middle. I think by the time we would get around to a voting week, it would be the week of December 13th.
Okay. And just very,
schedule up.
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Newman. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Monday, November 29th at 10 a.m. is the mayor's office.
An
Council
Office of Equity.
Okay. Because my next question was going to be for either Commissioner or / Councilperson Gross or anyone else who's knowledgeable. If anyone in the public wanted to show their support for the Gender Equity Commission's budget or line item, or funding for us, how would could anyone speak to how they could go about doing so publicly or attending to watch? So thank you for that date. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there in the event that commissioners did want to attend, or anyone in the public wanted to attend, tune in, and offer maybe public support for the commission.
So that's a great question. When we had the date that Director Newman just gave, that's a budget hearing. That is not a public hearing. So it is not a session where the public gives testimony. But as a reminder, you can come and make yourself heard every week of our lives on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So tomorrow morning, once again at 10 a.m., you can sign up for public comment at the city clerk's office. You can come in person to city council chambers now, although seating and admission is limited because of COVID restrictions. But you can also still Zoom in, which is super helpful, and we get a lot of public testimony as well. There is a specific date for comments, which can be, an hour long or several hours long meeting for public comment on budget amendments specifically. And I am going to be clicking here on my screen to see if I can get that in front of me. It looks to me that we have it currently scheduled, and they're all subject to change, but it's currently scheduled for Monday, December 13th at 10 a.m. But in
Wonderful.
addition, there are many other, like again, twice a week. You can always make yourself heard at City Council.
So basically what it sounds like is if folks wanted to make their voices heard in support, they can show up to any of the meetings prior to the actual budget hearing for the mayor's office and just offer support publicly.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we can also get email, so you can email the city clerk's office and they distribute it to all members. But it's also possible to find the direct email addresses for each of the 9 council members' offices at the city clerk's website as well. And we often receive testimony in writing.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. That was a nice lesson, right? And council and budget advocacy. And, you know, and again, just I always like to put my plug out for, you know, people practicing their civic rights and getting involved in local politics and being knowledgeable of the process and how things are done. Because, you know, if people weren't aware before, the last several months have certainly shined a light on the importance of local politics and happenings. So, yes, get involved. Commissioner Ramey.
And I'm agreeing with you, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm thinking, since we're having a conversation as we do every year about budgets, sort of aside from the Gender Equity Commission's budget, and this is very important, I wonder if we have a sense of what opportunities we might have as a commission to weigh in or be helpful or advise on applying a gender equity lens to some of those other budget spending areas. So Amanda, you listed, for instance, paving and some of the infrastructure improvements. This group has talked extensively about the ways in which those things are in fact gendered. It's kind of a hidden gendered impact, but we know that that's true. And something that we've talked about for the last few years is, you know, how do we kind of get inside that budget process and apply a gender equity lens or help support the city departments that are doing that work. So I just kind of want to elevate that back to the top. It's a very big question, obviously, but when we talk about budgets, it's sort of the big way that the city spends its resources. So I wonder what we might want to think about moving forward in terms of helping to put that gender equity lens on some of that proposed spending.
Thank you. That's a very good point. And I just, not to put you on the spot too much today, but Commissioner Gross, I wonder, because I also, again, know that this is something that you have raised quite often in the past, especially around infrastructure. So, you know, and of course, that's very relevant right now, right? We just had federal legislation passed for major infrastructure bill for, you know, and we know that Pennsylvania is getting like $1 billion alone in support, possibly more. I'm just trying to remember. And so I know Commissioner Gross, that's something that has been on your mind a lot. And also you've been doing some work yourself kind of around that area. So again, to Commissioner Ramey's point, it's a big question. And I wonder if you just have some points on how we can support that, you know, helping people to look at how that spending is done through a gendered lens and how we can advocate and what makes sense for us to do so. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. It is, yeah, it's one of the things that I'm a little bit of a broken record. So thank you for acknowledging my favorite topic. I think we still have a long way to go. We don't see these budget proposals you know, with an intersectional lens. They're not reported to council with an intersectional lens. And so one of the things that we can do is ask the question, because these budget hearings, again, they're not public hearings, they're more like an interrogatory conversation between council members and the department directors. So for example, if I see Director Newman at the table on the budget for DPW, I could ask a question that we probably aren't able to answer right now, which is that, like, in our paving budget, do we have any idea of its, you know, intersectional impact? Certainly it's a common conversation that you see in if you read a lot of transit policy. You know, for a lot of cities, the paving that they do on their roads is really beneficial to kind of more affluent suburbanites who are commuting into the city. And we know that a lot of our population don't own cars. And we certainly know that that's overrepresented for our poor residents, our female-headed households in poverty with children who don't own cars. So who are those roads for? It's just a kind of one of those really illustrative good questions to ask because it's such a big fat budget. But one thing that's good news about disaggregated data that I'd like to remind us of, I put it in our Slack channel, but I feel like maybe no one saw it because we haven't really transitioned to Slack. And I'll just say for here into the record so we can all look at it, is that several weeks ago, Council passed a bill sponsored by members O'Connor and Strasburger, and they deserve a real shout out for that. It is Bill 2021-2015, and it directs the City Bureau of Police to take immediate steps to improve, I'm reading the little synopsis I put in Slack, to improve its data collection and publication thereof in such a manner that meets specific disaggregation criteria, making any necessary and appropriate changes to its internal operating procedures to apply with this resolution. So we all know it takes time and resources to keep track of information, and you really do have to allocate the staffing and the budget and the tools and the electronic tools or digital tools to do that. But I feel like this was a really strong step, and it's been long overdue that we look at the intersectional impact on by race, by gender, by class, by neighborhood, on policing or over policing, or the impacts of where we're spending the time in our police budget. And this is maybe a good model that we wouldn't be able to get all the way to immediately, but that we should continue to push as a commission that we have these kinds of resolutions. We have a model here so that our departments at least can start keeping track of who was impacted by their operating or capital budgets. And then we can have that public conversation about whether or not it really is meeting what we say is our priority. And so, yeah, so the short answer is no, we don't actually have good information. And secondly, let's keep asking. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you. And I do just quickly want to point out that this actually is relevant. I looks like I skipped over an agenda item, which was our end of year report / report to the mayor. I don't know how I did that, but I did. The reason why this is relevant is because I feel like Commissioner Gross, what you just raised, in that now there's a template or example, right, of legislation that is specifically calling for disaggregated data and reporting. So one of the things that we discussed during the working meeting is the end of year report, and possibly putting out a second report of recommendations for the incoming administration in the new year. And so I just wanted to raise as a possibility that this is an area that we could think about, where we make a recommendation on legislation for disaggregated data for all city departments, which of course would require, or something like that. I'm just throwing it out there as something around that realm, which of course would mean that people would have to dedicate resources and people and time and money, but again, just putting it out there, something along those lines. Just a thought. But Commissioner Hanson, yes, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. This very much ties in with the report that the Gender Analysis Committee put out this month. And our question that we wanted to raise to the GEC is precisely related to this topic. Our question was around, we're reviewing the briefing book that was prepared by Chatham students this past spring and the summer. And as you saw, hopefully, as everybody saw in our report, we reached out to some folks who were originally involved in that, and folks didn't have a recollection or really weren't able to answer our questions around the intended audience and purpose of the briefing book. So we wanted to bring that issue to the GEC and say, is this an opportunity then to speak with the new administration coming in, and before we finalize the book, are there specific people or positions within the city that we should attempt to speak to? And I think I thought in the context of our final report and whatever recommendations we're making, whether or not we've met with those people would affect our recommendations. So as I'm hearing all of this, I feel like there's a really important way to tie it to the work that we've started or are continuing to do around that book. But right now, I'd say our committee and folks who are on our committee, please feel free to chime in. I think we have more questions than direction right now, and would appreciate, any way that you see that we could tie this to what's being raised right now around, if there's a legislative recommendation, can we put this book to go alongside it and say, here's recommended best practices for how you do data disaggregation. But we wanted to make sure that whatever we create is both something that will be relevant for the community to see, that we could put through the GEC, and also for the city to actually use.
Commissioner Hanson, very quickly on that point. So I did pose this to Chief Powell, who did inform me that the employee that you reached out to is no longer with the city. So that number one, so just so you know, but number two, if you could please briefly fill people in, just for anyone who's listening and for the rest of the commission, what that briefing book was about and why the Gender Analysis Committee was looking into trying to. This has been going on for a while, so just if you could please just provide a quick summary or refresher on what that briefing book is and why it's so important to the commission and your committee in particular.
Yes, absolutely. So the briefing book is a list of, it goes through both the reasons to disaggregate data during data collection or during data analysis whenever possible. And it provides several recommendations for looking at disaggregation by race, by gender. There are some improvements that we as a committee think are very important to make to it. So we're working to ensure that it is an intersectional, that it covers, we're going to include language around disability, for example. Sexual orientation and sexuality was not included, so we want to include that as well. So there's some things that we saw that we want some changes that we think it's important to uphold the grounding principles that the commission voted on today. To accurately represent those, we need to make revisions to the book. And we want to also be mindful as we're making those revisions to the purpose and function of the book. And so we see a clear benefit to simply making it a document available for the public to see and understand, here's what the Gender Equity Commission recommends. But it was originally designed, from our understanding, to support INP, innovation and performance. So we wanted to connect with them ideally, or really, Janet, Marcel, Deb, if there are anybody else that you think that we should talk to, folks who could potentially use this, we would really appreciate the opportunity to connect. And also, if now, as I'm hearing you thinking about recommendations for the new administration, is it a cart and horse thing? Do we wait to meet with folks and say this is what we'd like to do in 2022, or are there folks that we should be speaking with now, and some of those recommendations could go into our end of year report? That's why we're kind of on the fence about what makes sense, and wanted to hear from the GEC about what you think where should we put our energy in terms of getting this into something for the end of the year and then moving into the new administrative year.
And quickly, this is clearly timely given the really important legislative information that Commissioner Gross has just shared with us about, the legislation on behalf of the Police Bureau, and some of, if there could be a citywide standardized guide on how to collect disaggregated data that was approved by, the mayor's office, council, et cetera, for consideration. Again, I know that we're thinking, big and further. However, it seems like a very relevant conversation, especially if we're going to begin doing this work. Commissioner Ramey, yes.
Yeah, my question actually was sort of related to what you just said. Is it the case none of us were involved in creating this briefing book? Is that right?
Correct.
So no commissioners were involved. So we're kind of a little bit in the dark, is what I'm gathering.
Yes, but our name's all over it.
Oh.
It's written as if it is ours and as if we endorsed it. That's the problem that I've had with it this whole time.
And we haven't seen it. This body has not had a chance to take a look at that.
The Gender Analysis Committee did, but we didn't see it prior to it going, the commission as a body was not a part of the conversation, the writing, the putting together of it. It was after the fact that our former executive director told us about it, that the document was, sorry.
Yes. Yeah, so
Okay.
it is in Slack. If you go into Slack, you'll find it. I can try to locate where else. I think we moved it to the gender analysis folder. Let me see if I can find it quickly for you so you have it as a reference, but I know it's in Slack's history. But
I guess when my question was, Amanda, just what you were saying, like, is there, I guess we don't know, was there a model that was used that sort of is a citywide model of like how these briefing books are done or how these things are?
So, Commissioner Ramey, I'm going to give you my very polite answer to that. I'm sorry, y'all. Which is that where we are as a commission is it was handed to us.
Okay.
And that is it. And so given the importance of disaggregated data and how important it is to us as a commission, especially anything that has our name on it, and especially given how Commissioner Gross just shared with us some really important legislative moves that are being made by our legislative city body, it is not only incumbent upon us and the city really in general, but timely for us to find ways to support and offer our expertise to support council, the mayor's office, departments, et cetera, in making sure that this disaggregated data is collected in a way that is equitable, that will really help and be intentional to really helping everyone in the decision-making process. And so we really want to make sure that we are able to offer support and at the very least with this document, ensure that it does not perpetuate long-standing systemic and institutional harms by not reporting or collecting data properly, which we know has led to a lot of the gross inequities that are existing and have been exacerbated in our city. So that is my very polite answer to you. And I am so excited for the expertise that sits on this commission and the potential for how we can move forward to support using an equitable lens in how we do reporting.
So I welcome your guidance and thoughts on, should the committee put some effort into continuing to reach out? Should we just put our best thoughts in terms of recommendations for how it's used? We can, and I think we should also have those conversations with the appropriate people as soon as possible, again, following the lead of the commission on who those folks might be.
Mm-hmm. And who would it make sense to talk to, if nothing else, just to be able to offer that support. So again, if no one has any answers now, that's okay, but it's out there. If anyone does have thoughts, Commissioner Manuel, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. My point of suggestion for you is that you've started the conversation with the Department of Innovation and Performance, but I would also include the Department of Human Resources and Civil Service, where a lot of the data that you were trying to obtain or understand and to ensure that it is desegregated is maintained in that respective department, but tied in with how it is disseminated and how it is retrieved through the partnership of the Department of Innovation and Performance and the Department of Human Resources and Civil Service. So it's really working with those two respective departments that will start the process and then continue to lead and guide the respective committee on who is next, so to speak. But I would start respectively there.
I'm going to just kind of put this out there, Commissioner Gross, just where, obviously this is an ongoing conversation, but do you see just on the onset the value of us, again, trying to pursue this, not just with the briefing book, but looking into how it can be put to use to be effective? If the city's going to have this tool sitting there, how can we not only ensure that it is truly an equitable tool, and also, the value and how it could potentially support, the work that is being done now and in future work.
So mandates are great, but you also want to have a funded mandate and not an unfunded mandate. And that's where the work gets slower. It's kind of easy to make the goal. But we can do that with, giving ourselves timelines or big horizons, or working in sequentially department by department where there's capacity. Also work with the new administration on building that capacity and advocating. I think we can work together to advocate for building those capacities within departments. It's a tough lesson to learn that you really do need specific skill sets for specific kinds of jobs. Whether it's going digital, you have to know people who know how to run, software and databases and programming. And similarly, I think with data collection, it's really better to have not just the standards, but the people who have fluency and experience working with numbers. So, and not just assume that someone who's already overworked can just kind of add it on to their workload. So, that can take some working through, but it would be about budgeting for those capacities and those resources and figuring out where they belong and how much that costs, and those job descriptions and those kinds of things. So I think it's an interesting endeavor that if we could, we can advocate for a kind of loose goals to be set. And that's still progress and getting it to be part of the conversation, but it would be, more lift for us, or a longer work, task, a bigger task to roll up our sleeves and figure out how to help solve or answer some of those questions. I would also say that there is a near-term opportunity for equity in budgeting, which is kind of how we started in this conversation, which is I think we mentioned briefly, the infrastructure bill. And we're all just learning about that. And so maybe a nice task for us would be to figure out who can give us a good briefing. We haven't even had a good briefing at council yet. So, if any of our working groups, commission, or maybe at our next meeting, people will have figured out what's in it, because really everybody's still reading it and trying to figure out what's in it, figuring out how much of it may come to Pittsburgh, what channels that comes through. Is it going to come through the state? Are they going to be able to push it or pull it one way or the other? And what are those opportunities? And it really is again about making sure that we are all know where infrastructure spending is being prioritized, and that it aligns with what we purport our values are. I've brought it up many times before, but when we started doing lead service replacement lines, it was a big, scary emergency. It was really an emergency, but you still have to start someplace. Who's going to be the very first house? Who's going to be the second house, the third house that you do? Because you're not doing 10,000 houses simultaneously. And we prioritize those by the low and moderate income neighborhoods in the city that had a preponderance of children as the most vulnerable population, and that also had a high density of lead lines. And just, if not that kind of parameter, that we do need to come up with parameters and have the conversation, and we can drive to have that conversation about so what is equity, and what would that mean in the kind of money, whether it's broadband money that we're getting, whether it's sewers, whether it's water lines, whether it's roads, whether it's bridges. I think it's always fair to ask the question, so what is the equity priority in the spending?
Right. So thank you for that. And I know we only have a few minutes left, so I just very quickly, to what was raised, to kind of, put a somewhat of a loose bow in it. That I'm hearing several things. That number one, it is a long, slow process, and we know that there was a tool that was created for innovation and performance that presently is the department that controls software and can house certain information because of who they are, and so what I'm wondering out loud is, and maybe this could be continuing business for the next meeting, but if the Gender Analysis Committee was able to get some support and guidance on, again, to Commissioner Hansen's points on what was the intent and how can the Gender Equity Commission, the commission itself, actually, be able to make those recommended changes to it, so that while we are waiting, like you said, because with government, it's always a long game, right? It's a marathon, it's never a sprint. It is what it is. So at least there would be a tool that the commission would feel comfortable with being put out to whomever needed to use it. Again, knowing that it's originally intended for INP. And so that's a start. But, I feel like that's something that in the interim we could consider, because again, it exists. This thing has been created already. It's just that we never had a chance to really have any influence on it, but our name is all over it. And it's out there, and it could be a tool to use, even if, not mandated, but just a tool to use for anybody who wanted a tool while we find ways to advocate. So to your point, Commissioner Gross, that, it seems that the commission in general does need more information. And I know this is something that we have wanted for a long time, to find a way to get more plugged in so that, like Commissioner Ramey said, we can find some very real and concrete ways for advocacy, to ask for things, to make recommendations on things, to I would say push and support the city in moving to a more equitable framework of thinking, which again echoes everything that you have been saying for years, Commissioner Gross, right? So, that's kind of what I see. It's the short term, what are we doing with this briefing book? The midterm, how can we begin to be intentional about advocacy, briefings, et cetera. And then the long term is continuing to help guide the city in that move towards using that equity lens and adopting the resources needed to use that disaggregated data, intersectional disaggregated data, for its decision-making process. Essentially, the city building and creating its own equity toolkit for all decision-making for the entire city. So we got some phases, but I think this is a wonderful conversation. Being mindful of the time, quickly, does anyone have any final comments that they'd like to make before we move to, I don't believe there's anybody in the public I was not informed of. So Bill, is that right? No public comment, nobody waiting in the wings? Bill's hiding, he's giving us our privacy. Or Alex, anyone waiting in the waiting room to be let in for public comment? Okay, I don't think so. I wasn't told there was. So, so any commissioners have any quick comments about anything I just said or that was said before we move to adjourn?
Next meeting date.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the support. Maybe I should look at the agenda. Yes, so everyone, as it stands, December 21st is our next meeting. And I'm pretty sure that, so I'm proposing that we look at a different meeting date, and I wanted to see if you all were available on the 14th of December instead of the 21st. I'm seeing some head nods. Same time. Because I figured, again, regardless of your faith or practice, there's a lot going on and most people are taking off and, but I wanted to know if that, when is Hanukkah? Hanukkah starts right after Thanksgiving this year, I think. So I don't think that would interfere. So how do we feel about that? And I will talk to the head of the city channel, Mr. David, to see if that is okay, because we don't want to overlap with council's budget hearings. So, all right. So it looks like mostly in agreement. What I will do is I will reach out. I will still send a follow-up email to the full commission, but I will go ahead and reach out to Mr. Feiner to make sure that they are available to support us. So for now, let's put a tentative pin in December 14th. Sound good, everyone? Commissioner Hanson, thank you. It takes a village, right? All right. And I did review the agenda and we have officially covered all of our items for today. Thank you everyone for a great meeting, a great discussion. We have a lot to think about between now and December. And I'll be working with the executive committee to get some information out about the final report. In the meantime, again, just reminder for all committees to put together a summary of the work they've done this year. And I'm asking for volunteers to help with the recommendations or the bill, or whatever we decide to call it, to put out, and what that will look like, timeline, et cetera. So thank you, everyone. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
I was gonna say, do y'all want to go anywhere? You want to stay? All right, all in favor? Okay, this meeting we have officially adjourned.